Bro, Mark Hunt's been putting it on people since the 90s. He hits like a fucking asteroidal impact. And he just had not just an iron chin, but like a warrior's mentality. That dude won the K1 Grand Prix. He was one of the baddest motherfuckers to ever do it.
That's a different species of human being, those Samoas.
Oh my God.
I had a bad start. My dad was really abusive. You know, he used to beat the fuck out of all of us. My dad was molesting my sister since the age of 6, I think. Yeah, he's a piece of shit. I couldn't help my siblings.
UFC fighter Mark Hunt is fuming after his last opponent, Brock Lesnar, failed a drugs test.
You scummy cunt. The UFC, you're shit. You motherfuckers don't look after nobody.
I know definitely they knew that Brock Lesnar was on the gear.
I just felt cheated. Worked my whole career to get to the top, and then when you get to the top, all you find is freaking crooked cheats and crooked companies.
As soon as I filed the lawsuit, my career was over. You know, I just didn't give a fuck.
If you enjoy the stories behind the legends of the fight game, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, check out our membership program where you can vote on who we cover next. Now, let's step into the world of Mark Hunt. Born on March 23, 1974 in South Auckland, New Zealand.
My family immigrated from Samoa. My parents are Samoans. They went to New Zealand. They started in the city and then they migrated out.
Mark Hunt grew up in a large Samoan family and had a turbulent youth.
I went back to Samoa when I was younger. I think I was 4 or 5. I lived there for like a few years. When I came back to New Zealand, I couldn't speak English.
Back in New Zealand, Hunt's family struggled to make ends meet, living through constant financial hardship that shaped much of his early life.
Growing up, like my dad lost his job. My mum was the only income earner in that house. A lot of Polynesian families struggled in that era.
Hunt revealed that he and his siblings endured a traumatic childhood.
Yeah, I've got 2 older brothers and an older sister. Growing up, you know, I had a bad start, but dad was really abusive. Mother that was never there. We got dealt pretty rough cards.
Marked by abuse and hardship by the hands of their father.
But my dad was a piece of shit. He was absolutely a piece of shit. He just, I was shit scared of him. He was, to me, he was like bigger than Godzilla. You know, he used to beat the fuck out of all of us. He was not a good person. He used the church as a cover. My older brother, John, killed himself probably about 7, 8 years ago. You know, Steve's schizophrenic. My dad was molesting my sister since the age of 6, I think. Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
The first time Mark Hunt ran away from home, he was just 8 years old.
I was 8. I'd run away from home. He whacked me. It was the start of one of those abusive hidings, and I jumped out the window and ran for my life. The only thing that kept me warm was my swollen ear. And I spent the nights and the next 2 weeks homeless. I was pretty scared.
Later in life, Mark found the courage to speak openly about these struggles.
I think the problem here in my culture is that it's called ma or shame. We don't bring out our issues and problems. And that's the thing I feel that what I did was, if there's issues, you need to speak about these things, bring it out into the open so it can be fixed and healed. In our culture, they don't do that. They try to put it under the carpet and hide it.
He spent much of his time out on the streets, where he frequently got into fights.
And I felt safer out in the streets than I did at home. We were doing a lot of bad things as kids, mugging people. You know, I learned to drive in stolen cars and ride in stolen bikes.
A lot of my boys are from New Zealand, and they used to tell me their stories of Mark Hunt being a fucking menace on K Road.
You imagine getting a street fight with Mark Hunt?
Nah,
Are you
man.
fucking kidding me?
Definitely not.
He even ended up in jail twice during his early years.
Got 9.5 months the first time for aggravated robbery. I beat someone for his shoes. Really dumb. I love jail because you get fed 3 times a day. You know, I was working, I had structure. I had a purpose of doing stuff. And then the second time was for assault. I only got like a month or something in the Rock.
Then you came out and then you wanted to pursue a rugby career?
I wanted to be a rugby league player.
Yeah.
I was pretty good at it, but never made it.
A turning point came when, shortly after his second release from prison, Hunt was involved in a late-night brawl outside an Auckland nightclub.
Yeah, partying with Mark was a crack-up.
We'd all get dressed, we'd go out, and the mission at the end of the day would be to get drunk and get girls. And that would never happen, because they'd always get into fights.
We just finished mugging some people at the back of the nightclub. I said to one of my other friends, "Oh, where's Jono gone?" He said, "He's outside with these 4 boys." And I went to have a look, and these guys are kicking the shit out of him in this corridor. So I run to help him. So I slipped over, I landed right next to him like this. And they're kicking the shit out of us. These guys were standing in front of the club called DTMs. They were laughing, so, you know, I was irate after that.
He knocked out multiple people in the fight.
I dropped like maybe 3 or 4 of them, and there was a big rumble.
Impressing a bouncer who invited him to start training at a local gym.
The bouncer, his name is Sam Masters, he grabbed me and hid me in the toilets, and he became my first trainer. You know, he saved me from getting arrested, and he said, "Would you like to fight Muay Thai?" What was that? He said, come to my gym.
Remarkably, just after a week of beginning training, Hunt won his first Muay Thai bout by first-round knockout, earning a couple of beers as a prize.
4 days of training, and the next weekend I was fighting in the very same club, my first Muay Thai fight. The guy was like 30 kilos heavier than me. I still knocked him out when I was 17 years old.
After his first fight, he began competing on the regional scene in New Zealand to gain experience.
Because Sam was a surfer, and I went with the surfers. I got free trips to go and fight all around the country. It was like a father figure to me, Sam. I didn't really look at fighting as a way of life. It was just a way to get out of my house. The martial arts helped save me. I had no direction.
Riding this momentum, he soon moved to Sydney, Australia to pursue fighting full-time, working multiple jobs just to stay afloat.
How did you get from NZ to Australia?
The second time I got out of jail, my friend said to me, we should go and live in Oz. And I said, what's that place? So I said, yes.
But his growing gambling problem constantly left him broke.
I had a gambling problem.
What were you playing?
Pokies.
Pokies, okay. How did you fall into it if you had no money?
When I had work, I went in, no money, gone. You spend all your pay, you wait till next week, same thing again.
Forcing him to move from house to house as the money ran out.
We all got kicked out of the house. I had nowhere to stay. I was standing on the street. I was about to go rob this Indian store. I was going to go run that store and get some money and then go from there. But, my mind said to me, go look in the phone box there and look for a place. Went straight to a place, called that number. The dude said, you can stay here. I went and jumped the train, rented a room and stayed there.
After finally finding a place to rent in Australia, Hunt began training at the Liverpool kickboxing gym in Sydney under renowned coach Alex Toohey.
His name was Alex Toohey. He was the first Australian kickboxing world champion ever.
He had the speed, the short range speed and power.
His very first organized fight was actually a boxing match.
My first fight was John Wyborn. I went from the bar, a cigarette, to fighting it. I lost the fight.
His first kickboxing fight ended in a decision loss, and at the time he wasn't taking fighting seriously, partying, drinking, and drifting through life until he entered the Oceania tournament, where for the first time he committed himself fully to the sport. Lucy Toohey, a respected Australian kickboxing judge and promoter, helped guide his early career and was instrumental in securing his entry into the Oceania tournaments.
Alex Toohey had this boy light heavyweight, and they watched him fight, and he was good. That was like, wow, where did this boy come from?
The lady her name was Lucy Toohey, she said, come and live with me in Manly, and do this training with them. Because I used to go help her with their shows and put her chairs out, and she put me into these K1 tournaments to fight, and I said, okay, the first Oceania was coming up, so they just opened the market for it, and I wasn't even considered. And she put me into these tournaments.
The Oceania tournament was a brutal 3-fight tournament held on a single night, and Mark Hunt entered it fearless, ready to take on whoever stood in front of him.
He's big, he's bad, and he's looking to steamroll through the opposition tonight, and his name is Mark Hunt.
He beat Amatagi.
He walks straight into a right hand. The living legend applies the count, it's all over.
Ronnie Sefo and Phil Fagan.
Oh, there's a big right hand to the side of the jaw. Nice uppercut from Hunt. He goes down. It's over.
To become the 2000 K1 Oceania champion.
Mark Hunt is the K1 King of Kings.
When I won my first tournament for $10,000.
You made it.
We made it, like $10,000. When you win that tournament, you get an opportunity to fight in Japan.
Hunt was invited to Japan to enter the K1 Grand Prix, where he initially struggled and lost his first bout to Jérôme Le Banner.
I went and fought for the first time in Japan. That's when I started seeing a little bit of the money. I got paid $27,000 US for that. I think 2000, I started seeing it as a way to make a living for myself.
After getting a taste of life as a prize fighter, he threw himself into training for the 2001 Oceania tournament.
I was working a full-time job. My day started at 4:30 and 10:30, training for this Oceania 2001 K1.
He once again won the tournament, knocking out Nathan Briggs,
Nathan Briggs in all sorts of trouble.
Andrew Peck,
The sleeping pill.
and Peter Graham to claim the title.
Final minute now of the fight. There it is.
Then I won $27,000 in 16 minutes.
Winner via way of knockout and two-time K1 Oceania champion, Mark Hunt. Thank you, everyone.
Winning the Oceania tournament qualified him for the larger K1 World Grand Prix in Melbourne, held that June. After a strong start, a knockout win over Hiromi Amada, he lost a decision to Ernesto Hoost in the semifinals, which initially stopped him from advancing to the Fukuoka tournament in Japan. But when a late withdrawal opened a spot, Hunt was called up on just 3 weeks' notice.
3 weeks prior, I was in Auburn with boys having a party, drinking, smoking, all that shit. And then he calls me to fight this guy, manager, and I said, oh yeah, sure.
Suddenly finding himself on one of Japan's biggest qualifying stages.
They were fighting around, I said, oh shit.
His first fight was against renowned kickboxer Ray Sefo.
Oh, he was an established fighter in K1. He was one of the Japanese stars.
How are you feeling now? A little bit nervous, but it's my last chance to make Tokyo Dome.
Where he lost by decision and assumed his tournament run was over. However, an eye injury left Sefo unable to continue.
He's all fucked up.
As I was fucked, but I think I was never the same. I was like the ding.
And the organization asked Hunt to take his place and face Adam Watt in the final.
If you had the chance, can you go another fight after this? Yeah.
Hunt agreed, stepped back into the ring, and stopped Watt in the third round to become the 2001 Fukuoka tournament champion.
It's lucky. So Tokyo though made it.
Like I made 57,000 US.
From there, he qualified to compete on K1's biggest stage, the K1 World Grand Prix in Tokyo, Japan, in December 2001.
8 of the best kick fighters in the world. They won the regional tournament. They fight 3 times in one night to be the best fighter in the world. Bro, I could just feel it. I stopped smoking for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Bro, I had the good Lord on my side. 100%, man. That story is called the K1 Bible.
Yeah. There, Hunt embarked on a Cinderella run through a field of the world's top kickboxers. He defeated Jerome Le Banner, one of the tournament favorites, by knockout in the quarterfinals, then won a decision over Stefan Lecco in the semis. In the championship bout, Hunt faced Brazilian karate champion Francisco Filho. After an extra round, Hunt prevailed by unanimous decision to win the 2001 K1 World Grand Prix Championship in front of 65,000 fans in Tokyo. It was a stunning upset that cemented Hunt as one of the world's elite strikers and transformed him into a star in Japan.
You're selling Mark Hunt dolls, $400 a pop. That's Japan for you.
he was up there. In Japan, he was as big as a Michael Jordan.
At one time, I was the highest kickboxer paid in the world. I won the world title when I was 27 years of age, and I got my first work contract as a kick fighter when I won that tournament. I'm the only K1 heavyweight champion this side of the world to ever win it.
Despite his unorthodox path to the top, he earned the nickname the Super Samoan.
There was a show called Dragon Ball Z. It's a cartoon, an anime, a Japanese anime that the race is called Saiyans, and when they fight, their hair goes white. So they called me the Samoan monster, or the Super Samoan, because when I go to fight, I dye my hair.
Hunt also became famous for his walk-off knockouts, delivering a fight-ending punch and casually walking away before the referee officially stops the fight.
He just walks off every time. Every time he walks off.
During his kickboxing run, he fought other notable names such as Gary Goodridge and Mirko Cro Cop.
And Mirko has the best left high kick of all time. Bro, he ate a Mirko Cro Cop head kick. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Nobody eats a Mirko Cro Cop head kick.
Giving him the experience and visibility needed to earn his place on Japan's biggest stage, Pride Fighting Championships.
After winning the K1 world title in 2001, like any mountain you climb or whatever, I lost interest for it. I went back to gambling, smoking, mucking around, doing whatever, because I had already conquered that challenge. I had my last fight in K1 in Vegas against Gary Goodridge, and that's when I was approached by Pride. The first fight was $250,000. Huh? What'd you say? And I said, wow, okay. With K1, I was getting ripped off. I was getting paid $60,000 US a fight. They asked me would I fight this guy named Pajitan, and I said, what is this MMA stuff? And that's when I first saw Pride, and I was like, that's interesting. I conquered K1. What is this new sport? I didn't know anything about MMA. Pride offered me money to go and train with a guy named Bash Rudin. They gave me $40,000. Go train with Bash Rudin in America. I'm like, nah, I'll just keep the money and go and train in New Zealand. So I get the money when I train with a guy named Steve Oliver. That ground stuff, I got hammered for 6 weeks.
After conquering the kickboxing world, Hunt made an unlikely transition to mixed martial arts in 2004. He had no formal background in grappling, yet he signed on to fight in Japan's premier MMA organization. Hunt's MMA debut came against Olympic judo gold medalist Hidehiko Yoshida, and it exposed his ground game weakness.
How'd your first fight go?
I lost to an armbar. I had no clue.
Yoshida submitted Hunt with an armbar in the first round of their bout.
He kept trying to pin me down, the little rat.
Hidehiko Yoshida armbars Mark Hunt.
It was a really harsh reality, to be honest. Going from one of the great white sharks as a kick fighter to going to being a guppy in a shark tank. Striking is just one of the aspects of MMA. So I was like a fish out of water.
Despite this setback, Hunt rebounded in impressive fashion and went on a winning streak in Pride against increasingly high-level opponents. Over his next fights, Hunt shocked many MMA fans by defeating 2 of Pride's most feared strikers. In 2004, he stepped in as a late replacement to face Vanderlei Silva, the reigning Pride 205-pound champion. Hunt, massively outweighing the smaller Silva, managed to neutralize the Brazilian's attacks and won a split decision.
Hunter has just defeated Vanderlei Silva. Silva has just tasted defeat for the very first time.
Then at Pride Shockwave 2005, Hunt faced off with legendary Croatian kickboxer Mirko Cro Cop for the second time. This time in a stunning upset, Hunt beat Cro Cop via split decision.
And you Wait for this result. Mark Hunt has defeated Mirko Cro Cop.
These wins over Silva and Cro Cop dramatically raised Hunt's stock in MMA and proved he could hang with elite fighters even without a polished ground game. By 2006, Hunt's Pride run continued into the promotion's open-weight Grand Prix tournament.
I became one of Pride's stars also in the end.
He defeated Tsuyoshi Kosaka by TKO in the opening round of the Grand Prix.
Big overhead right.
Finally over.
That's it.
However, in the next stage, Hunt's grappling deficiencies resurfaced. He was quickly taken down and submitted via Kimura by former UFC champion Josh Barnett in the quarterfinals of the tournament.
Now he's got it. Going for the Kimura. It's over.
After the Josh Barnett bout, another major opportunity came Hunt's way. Hunt earned a chance to fight for the Pride heavyweight title when he was matched against Fedor Emelianenko at Pride Shockwave 2006. In a gutsy performance, Hunt surprised Fedor early by escaping an armbar and even catching the Russian in an Americana shoulder lock attempt of his own. But Fedor's grappling skill proved too much. He reversed the position and forced Hunt to tap out to a Kimura, handing Hunt a honorable submission loss.
Fedor remains the heavyweight champion.
Following his strong run in Pride, Hunt hit a rough patch as the organization folded in 2007. When the UFC purchased Pride, Mark Hunt wasn't among the fighters brought over. His situation at the time was complicated. He had been fighting in Pride, but his broader contract was reportedly still tied to K1, and the UFC only absorbed a selection of Pride athletes whose deals were straightforward.
You've still got a contract with Pride?
I didn't want to work for their company because they didn't like how they operated. I was just going to walk in and just get my money out and just, throw in the towel. So what they did was they told me to wait.
He continued competing in Japan for the Dream promotion in K1, but the lack of grappling experience led to a string of defeats. Hunt was submitted in just over a minute by Alistair Overeem in 2008.
And if he extends now, he's going to get it. He's got it.
Knocked out in 18 seconds by Melvin Manhoef.
You want to talk about like the scariest striker ever in MMA? I think it's Melvin. Melvin Manhoef, who weighed like 190 pounds, put him out with one punch.
Hi. Satsuko Kiru.
Dropped Mark Hunt and put him out. Like, who the fuck does that?
And submitted again by Gegard Mousasi in 2009.
I did one punch trip because he was so heavy, he felt like a turtle. I could have controlled him all night.
Submitted him in 1 minute.
Trying to escape. He got it.
These losses extended Hunt's losing skid to 5 in a row by mid-2009, leaving his MMA record at a disappointing 5-6. During his K1 and Dream years, Hunt was also tied up in a legal battle with his former managers.
I was fighting a battle outside the ring.
A situation he couldn't speak about publicly.
I can't speak about it. I got someone that was ripping me off, people that are cheating me for money. So my mindset was, why am I going to fight when there's a hole in your ship, when this guy's taking from you, cheating you,
And the ongoing stress left him in the wrong frame of mind every time he stepped into a fight.
I was that mentally drained from all these, my old crooked managers.
After these setbacks, many thought Hunt's fighting career might be nearing its end. But in 2010, an unexpected opportunity emerged when the remaining obligations of his old Pride contract were transferred to the UFC. The promotion reportedly offered to buy out his deal and release him, but Hunt refused, choosing to fight instead.
So we start to learn about the story, like how did Mark Hunt end up here, losing streak, time off.
How I got that contract, people can pretty much assume. I'm not going to tell you how I got it, but we're already on bad terms.
They're like, yeah, we wanted to get rid of him. He has a contract and he wants to take his shot.
So what did Dana White say?
He said that they're trying to pay me off and get me to leave the contract. I was on a losing streak. I can't legally speak about it. I can tell you that whatever Dana White said is incorrect.
Determined to prove he still belonged at the highest level, he insisted on competing, forcing the UFC to give him his long-awaited shot inside the octagon.
I don't have no issues with Dana White as a person, but as a business person, he's all for the company. He doesn't give a crap about any of his employees.
Hunt made his UFC debut in September 2010 at UFC 119. It was a rocky start. He faced Sean McCorkle, a grappler, and lost via straight armbar submission in the first round.
So first fight of the night, and it goes horribly.
At that moment, Hunt's MMA record fell to 5-7, which was one of the worst records in the UFC at the time. And few expected what came next. Mark Hunt proceeded to revive his career spectacularly.
Being a fighter and a person that doesn't like quitting, and I thought, I'm going to start fighting. I had my next fight was here in Australia, I think it was, and that's when I started my comeback fight. So I said, I'm going to start really fighting. Fuck this.
In early 2011, Hunt scored his first UFC victory with a crushing knockout of Chris Tuchscherer at UFC 127 in Sydney. The KO, a walk-off uppercut, earned him a knockout of the night bonus and signaled that Hunt's power was a threat to anyone.
Continuing to nice uppercut. Look at that. Wow. Wow.
He followed up in September 2011 by outpointing former IFL champion Ben Rothwell over 3 rounds at UFC 135. Hunt then began 2012 with another impressive stoppage, TKOing French heavyweight Cheikh Kongo in the first round at UFC 144 in Japan.
All sorts of trouble, and he's trying to finish it here. It's over. It's Mark, the Super Samoan.
Suddenly, the veteran who once had a 5-7 record was riding a 3-fight UFC win streak. Hunt's momentum continued into 2013. After recovering from an injury the previous year, he was matched against 7-foot-tall Stefan Struve. That win over Struve earned Hunt another bonus, his second knockout of the night in the UFC, and extended his streak to 4 victories in a row. Thanks to his string of knockouts, Hunt became a bona fide fan favorite. In May 2013, he was given a high-profile fight against former UFC heavyweight champion Junior Dos Santos at UFC 160. The match was a slugfest, with Hunt constantly moving forward, throwing haymakers and Dos Santos replying with his own power shots and trademark spinning kicks. In the third round, Dos Santos landed a spinning heel kick to Hunt's head that dropped him and led to a knockout loss. Despite the defeat, both men earned Fight of the Night honors. Many media outlets hailed it as one of the greatest heavyweight fights in UFC history. Later that year, on the 7th of December 2013, Hunt headlined a UFC event in Brisbane, Australia, against Brazilian giant Antonio Bigfoot Silva. Over 5 rounds, the two heavyweights put on an absolutely epic battle. Hunt and Silva traded enormous blows and momentum shifts, both pushing through exhaustion and damage.
Oh, down goes Hunt. And how about Mark Hunt with a takedown? Look at this. Oh, humongous straight right from Mark Hunt. Bigfoot's in trouble.
In the end, the judges scored it a majority draw, with 1 judge for Hunt and 2 judges seeing it dead even. UFC President Dana White called it one of the best heavyweight fights he'd ever seen, and it earned Fight of the Night honors as well.
I was going fucking nuts in the ballroom during that fight. They were punching like 2 middleweights. It was the sickest heavyweight fight I've ever seen.
In an unusual move, the UFC awarded both Hunt and Silva their win bonuses due to the incredible performance. However, the glory of that night was tainted afterward by controversy. Silva tested positive for elevated testosterone in his post-fight drug test. Silva had been on a doctor-prescribed testosterone replacement therapy, but his levels were above the allowed limit. As a result, the draw was officially changed to a no contest for Bigfoot Silva, while Hunt's record remained a draw. Hunt was frustrated that Silva had been taking performance-enhancing drugs, believing that without them, he could have won the fight.
With MMA, you could kill someone. Could be premeditated murder. For instance, I know I'm going to fight you in 3 months. I use steroids to make me stronger, bigger, and faster. And if I kill you, should I get a fine from USADA and get a time off? Or should I go straight to fucking jail?
In mid-2014, as Hunt was negotiating a new contract, he encountered some tensions with the UFC. In August 2014, he posted cryptic tweets about being unemployed, prompting speculation that he'd been released. It turned out Hunt had actually been negotiating a contract extension with the UFC at the time. Dana White even responded publicly to clarify that Hunt hadn't been cut, and shortly after, Hunt signed a new 6-fight deal. He also stated this new deal would likely be the final chapter of his MMA career. On the 20th of September 2014, he faced Roy Big Country Nelson in the main event of UFC Fight Night 52 in Japan. Nelson was renowned for his iron chin, yet Hunt became the first man to ever knock Nelson out cold. In the second round, Hunt delivered a picture-perfect right hand that sent Nelson face first to the canvas, then walked off without needing a follow-up. That KO was later voted the 2014 Knockout of the Year in many MMA publications, and it earned Hunt a Performance of the Night bonus. At 40 years old, Hunt was still a top contender and more popular than ever. Just a few weeks later, fate put Mark Hunt in a position to fight for gold. Cain Velasquez, the UFC heavyweight champion, was injured and had to pull out of a scheduled title defense in November 2014. Hunt was tapped as a late replacement to face Fabricio Verdum for the interim UFC heavyweight championship at UFC 180 in Mexico City. It was a short notice opportunity and a daunting challenge. In the opening round, the bout was going remarkably well for Hunt. He shrugged off Verdum's takedown attempts and even dropped Verdum twice with his infamous left hook. The Cinderella story seemed alive, but in the second round, Verdum adjusted and threw a sudden flying knee that caught Hunt flush. The blow knocked Hunt down and led to a TKO stoppage.
And it's all over! Fabricio Verdum is the new
interim UFC heavyweight champion of the world.
Mark Hunt's fairy tale run at the title fell short. Hunt took the loss in stride, knowing he had come far for someone once considered an afterthought in the division. Hunt continued to face elite competition in the UFC, but controversy and damage began to overshadow his performances. In 2015, he faced rising contender Stipe Miocic and absorbed a record 361 strikes before the referee stopped the fight in the 5th round. Many wondered if age was catching up to him, but Hunt answered back later that year at UFC 193, knocking out Bigfoot Silva in the 1st round, a decisive and satisfying revenge after their drug-tainted draw 2 years earlier. In March 2016, Hunt added another notable name to his knockout list, former UFC heavyweight champion Frank Mir. Headlining a show in Brisbane, Hunt knocked out Mir with a single overhand right in the 1st round, and Hunt walked off as the Australian crowd erupted. It was vintage Mark Hunt. Unfortunately, yet again a post-fight drug test stole some headlines. It was later revealed that Frank Mir had failed his in-competition drug test, testing positive for oral turinabol. Mir received a suspension, and Hunt was once more left fuming that another opponent had been on PEDs. By this point, Hunt was one of the most outspoken critics of steroid use in MMA, repeatedly calling for harsher penalties for cheaters.
It really irritates me up my skin that I have to share the octagon with the guys that have cheated to get here.
Despite Hunt hinting at retirement around this time, the UFC showed its faith in him by signing him to a new multi-fight deal in April 2016. This contract was reportedly a 6-fight, multi-million-dollar deal. It was an exceptional offer for a 42-year-old heavyweight and reflected his status as a fan favorite who could still headline major events. But no one knew that the biggest controversy of Hunt's career was just about to begin.
The one that broke the straw and coming back, it was Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. On 9th July 2016, Hunt fought the returning superstar Brock Lesnar at the massive UFC 200 event.
I really do almost feel like UFC 200 is too insane. My weak-ass bitch heart
Can't handle it. I agree.
They were trying to make UFC 200 crazier after Conor and Nate fell off.
True.
This is where all this came from.
Lesnar's return for UFC 200 came together at the last moment.
This deal came together so quickly.
The UFC had been searching for a major star to bolster the card, and when late negotiations with WWE suddenly made Lesnar available for a one-off fight, the deal was finalized only weeks before the event.
Is exempt from the 4 months in advance rule.
Lesnar had been granted a special exemption by the UFC from the usual 4-month drug testing notice due to his late signing for the event.
This is a crazy deal.
They weren't testing 4 months ago.
Exactly.
Like every other person in the world. He's the exception.
There's just no way they could have that because they weren't even talking to him 4 months ago. It's definitely not ideal when you're trying to promote this sport as being absolutely tested, right?
But if you're going to make exceptions for him, you got to do it for other guys.
Maybe they would if you were famous as Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
With little time to find an opponent, the UFC turned to Mark Hunt, a top-ranked heavyweight who was unbooked, willing, and dangerous enough to make the matchup credible.
He's not intimidated in the least
by
bit
anything.
of Brock Lesnar. Nothing. Doesn't give a fuck.
Been there, done that. He's a warrior.
What followed would become one of the most controversial bouts of Hunt's career.
The argument against it is you got to say, listen, if you want to make this legitimate, you should have no question whatsoever that your athletes are clean and compliant. And that means 4 months out. But how are you not going to make this fight? As a fan, it's criminal to not make this fight. It is criminal. I want to see it.
Hunt went the full 3 rounds with Lesnar, defending takedowns and landing some strikes, but ultimately Lesnar's wrestling controlled the fight and Hunt lost by unanimous decision.
I just couldn't get it going.
How you got that straight with your
I was like a little kid. I felt like my dad was beating my ass. You know what I mean?
The real scandal broke after the fight. Just days later, news emerged that Brock Lesnar had failed multiple drug tests surrounding the event.
But here's what I can tell Mark, if Mark is listening. They tested the shit out of Brock Lesnar, and they didn't know. The only way they would have known is if USADA told them. He tested clean for a bunch of them, and then tested positive for the one that was like, I think 3 weeks out of the fight, and then there was the other one that he tested for post-fight.
It turned out Lesnar tested positive for clomiphene, an anti-estrogen agent often used as a steroid masking drug.
He took estrogen blockers, and the only reason that anybody takes estrogen blocker on purpose is to restart their testosterone after they do a steroid cycle. So I don't know what the fuck was going on, man, with Brock. Well, who knows? Maybe Brock was like, look, I'm one and done in this bitch.
in both an out-of-competition sample and on fight night.
The results of the in-competition testing again reflected the presence of clomiphene and hydroxyclomiphene.
This meant that at the time he fought Hunt, Lesnar had a banned substance in his system.
That's the third time that's happened to Mark Hunt, dude.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission quickly overturned the result to a no contest and later fined Lesnar and suspended him for 1 year. Mark Hunt was enraged.
You Scotty, fuck the UFC. You're shit. You motherfuckers don't look after nobody. You just go, here, throw this motherfucker, this freaking stupid fucking Samoan under the bus, and they don't get the best in front of the whole world. We'll let this fucking white piece of shit fucking sticking needles in his ass and say, oh, let him cheat all the way to the fucking bank. Let's give him fucking millions of dollars.
They knew he was dirty 3 weeks prior. So they knew before that. I've got the records. They popped him the night off. They gave him an exemption. The whole world knew he was on steroids. The guys that were supposed to look after me weren't looking after me.
He felt the UFC had willfully put him in the cage with a juiced opponent for the sake of ticket sales.
All I asked for before I dropped this lawsuit on the UFC was, can I just have a clause in the contract so he doesn't have no money, he doesn't get no funds from it? Because I feel it starts with the money, and then they should enforce their punishment. You know, we're UFC, where they got the strictest punishments in the world. So why haven't you enforced it?
UFC fighter Mark Hunt is fuming after his last opponent, Brock Lesnar, failed a drugs test, demanding half of the American's fight fee of $3.5 million.
Just a few months after UFC 200, Hunt took the unprecedented step of filing a lawsuit against the UFC President Dana White, and Brock Lesnar in early 2017.
As soon as I filed the lawsuit, my career was over. You know, I just didn't give a fuck. I knew the company I was working for didn't have my back.
Oh, I just felt cheated. You know, I worked my whole career to get to the top, and then when you get to the top, what you find is freaking crooked cheats and crooked companies.
Hunt's lawsuit alleged that the parties conspired to allow a doped Lesnar to fight him, constituting fraud and endangering his health.
I felt that they knew that he was cheating and they allowed him to do it. They were selling their company. I thought this is what they were up to, and they used me as cattle to sell their company at this stage. I trusted you guys to look after me, to enforce your contract, but they've never done that since the get-go. The guy didn't even get weighed in properly.
He sought financial damages and changes to UFC's drug testing policies.
When a guy is cheating and cheats someone, he actually ruins history.
The guys that do come second place, third, fourth, fifth place, their kids are supposed to benefit from their hard work. But these kids lose out from this money and all this sort of stuff because this fuckwit here cheated to get to the top.
Right.
I look at it from that sort of aspect.
And the reason I put the lawsuit on the UFC is because steroids used to get away with it. They kept doing it.
This legal battle would drag on for years and significantly sour Hunt's relationship with the UFC. Meanwhile, Hunt continued competing in the octagon, though he now carried a palpable frustration about the sport's cheaters.
Have you ever been tempted at any point in your career because you see everybody else doing it?
Seems like that way right now. I want to do it right now because these guys are cheating, but I don't want to be like them. I'm not like that.
In March 2017, he faced Alistair Overeem, a rematch from their 2008 fight at UFC 209. Hunt fought evenly until Overeem caught him with a crushing knee in the clinch, knocking Hunt out in the third round. It was a tough loss, made tougher by Hunt's knowledge of Overeem's past steroid history. Overeem had failed a test in 2012, though he was clean in this 2017 fight. A few months later, in June 2017, Hunt headlined a UFC event in Auckland, New Zealand, against rising contender Derek Lewis. In front of a roaring Kiwi crowd, Hunt put on one of his finest performances, breaking down the heavy-handed Lewis with leg kicks and punches until Lewis could no longer continue. That fight earned Hunt his third fight of the night bonus in the UFC, and it would stand as his last victory in the octagon. Outside of fighting, however, the strain between Hunt and the UFC only grew. In September 2017, Mark Hunt authored an unflinchingly honest column for Player's Voice, in which he spoke about the toll his fighting career had taken on him, mentioning symptoms like memory loss and slurred speech. He also reiterated in that piece that despite these issues, he was a fighter at heart and willing to die in the cage if necessary. The UFC took this article as a serious red flag. In October 2017, just a month before Hunt was scheduled to fight Marcin Tybura in Sydney, the UFC pulled Hunt from the event, citing concerns for his health and safety. UFC officials said they wanted him to undergo further medical evaluation, especially neurological tests before competing again. Hunt was furious about being removed from the card. He claimed the UFC had misconstrued his words and that his quotes were taken out of context, noting that he had been cleared by doctors and was perfectly fit to fight.
Well, here's the thing. He wrote a story basically saying that he's slurring his words, he has brain damage. The list goes on of all these things that he's suffering from fighting. And now he's saying that it was taken out of context. You wrote the story.
Right.
How is the story you wrote taken out of context?
He believed the UFC's real motive was retaliation for his lawsuit and outspoken nature. Hunt went on social media to blast Dana White and the UFC, accusing them of double standards, as older fighters like Dan Kelly were still allowed to fight, and of trying to silence him. The incident underscored how strained things had become between Hunt and his promoter.
Mark Hunt, he kind of went off of you on Twitter yesterday.
He's always going off on me. Listen, sometimes you got to protect these guys from themselves, and that's what we're looking into right now. You know, you made a statement that I've hated him forever. I don't hate Mark Hunt at all. I never hated Mark Hunt. He knows that. I was actually really good to Mark Hunt.
After passing additional medical tests, Hunt was eventually cleared to resume fighting in early 2018. He entered what would be the final year of his UFC contract. On 11 February 2018, Hunt fought Curtis Blaydes at UFC 221 in Perth. In the first round, Hunt nearly knocked Blaydes out with a heavy punch, but Blaydes survived and resorted to his wrestling, taking Hunt down repeatedly. Across 3 rounds, Hunt was out-grappled and lost a unanimous decision. Prior to this fight, Hunt had already declared that he would not re-sign with the UFC once his contract was fulfilled, expressing bitterness toward how the company had treated him. His next fight was on the 15th of September 2018 in Moscow against submission specialist Alexei Oleinik. Unfortunately for Hunt, Oleinik managed to drag him to the mat and submit him with a rear naked choke in the very first round.
Oh, look at this! Wow!
Finally, on December 2nd, 2018, Hunt had the last fight of his UFC deal against Justin Willis at UFC Fight Night 142. It was a lackluster bout where Hunt couldn't find his knockout shot. Willis used movement and jabs to win a unanimous decision. This marked the end of Hunt's UFC tenure. At 44 years old, Hunt walked away from the UFC on a 3-fight losing streak, feeling that the good run he once had was long gone. He also suspected that his lawsuit had effectively blackballed him from opportunities in other major MMA organizations. Following his UFC exit, Hunt explored other combat sports avenues while awaiting the outcome of his lawsuit. Being a lifelong striker, he returned to his roots by taking a couple of boxing matches. On the 16th of December 2020, Hunt stepped into the boxing ring in Sydney to face Paul Gallen, a retired Australian rugby league star with a budding boxing career.
I was offered $3 million to take a dive against Paul Gallen. I've never been offered to take a dive ever my whole life apart from that fight. I just wanted to know how it worked. And then I found out how it worked and I said, oh, no, I won't do that.
Hunt gave the fans an entertaining slugfest, at one point knocking Gallen down, but Gallen proved resilient, and the fight went the distance with Hunt losing a unanimous decision. Despite the loss, Hunt seemed to enjoy the boxing arena and treated the bout as a new challenge. 2 years later, on the 5th of November 2022, Mark Hunt had what would be the final fight of his long career. He boxed Sonny Bill Williams, another famous ex-rugby player, and a much younger opponent at 37, in an event in Sydney. This time, the veteran Hunt prevailed in storybook fashion. He weathered the early rounds and then unleashed his power in the 4th round, knocking Williams down twice and forcing a stoppage by TKO.
He's hit Hunt! He's the big shot! Williams is it's over! It's over! My God! Hunt in his final fight!
It was Hunt's first win in any sport in several years, and fittingly, it was a knockout. At 48 years old, Mark Hunt ended his fighting career on a triumphant note. In the aftermath of the Williams bout, Hunt announced that he was officially retired from fighting. He expressed that his passion for combat had been diminished in recent years, largely due to the frustration and disillusionment from his legal battle with the UFC, explaining that the lawsuit took that passion away from him. Not long after, Hunt's lawsuit against the UFC reached its conclusion. In 2019, most of his claims had been dismissed in court, but a few allegations, fraud and battery related to the Lesnar fight, were allowed to proceed on appeal. Finally, in 2023, the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the dismissal of Hunt's remaining claims, essentially ending the case in the UFC's favor. The judges ruled that Hunt did not have sufficient evidence that the UFC and Dana White knowingly put him at risk against a juiced Lesnar. Hunt was even ordered to pay roughly $388,000 in the UFC's legal fees after losing the suit, adding financial sting to the defeat.
Listen, Mark Hunt he's lost so many lawsuits against us, it's insane. He's a bit of a delusional guy. He's gonna have to pay some legal fees.
At the end of the day, and like I said, I don't regret the decision at all, ever. It was the right decision to do. Took on a giant in the legal battle. In the end, financially, it wasn't a good idea. It cost my mental health. It cost me financially. My brand got damaged. People still think that I'm whiner, whinging motherfuckers. Yeah, I can't even say that word because that's just not me. And like I said, I gave up my retirement to try and make things better for everyone else and myself. As a pioneer, I thought it was my duty to lay the platform so no one else has to go for this rubbish. And it's still my duty. And I'm here to make things even and make things right.
For Hunt, it was a bitter pill. He had fought for what he believed was right, but in the end the courts didn't side with him. Now, officially retired from competition, Mark Hunt has shifted his focus to family and advocacy. He resides in Australia with his wife and children, and by all accounts is enjoying a more peaceful life after a career filled with fights. Yet the Super Samoan hasn't stayed completely quiet. He remains an outspoken voice about fighter safety and the dangers of performance-enhancing drugs in combat sports.
I've lost all respect for fighters that are using steroids and enhancing themselves. People's lives are at risk here, And these guys are sticking needles in their ass knowing that they're fighting to hurt someone. So my opinion about these guys are even stronger now. I've done my time as a prize fighter. I'm trying to make things change for sports, the martial arts community.
His experiences have made him an advocate for stricter drug testing and better health protections for fighters.
It's never been about money. It's probably because I couldn't help my siblings. Yeah, because no one helped me. For me, I would never be the person I am today without going through that. I would never be the person with integrity, with the kind of willpower I have, all the positive traits that I do have if I didn't go through that childhood.
Mark Hunt's journey is one of the most remarkable in fighting history. From troubled street kid,
I'm proud that I changed that cycle for myself and my family. The only thing I've learned from my parents is not to be like them.
Then to a K1 kickboxing world champion.
For me, like I said, I've lived my life as high as I can and as hard as I can. I didn't shy away from any challenge.
And then a beloved MMA icon who battled the best in the UFC. He built a legacy on thunderous knockouts, an indomitable chin, and an unyielding will to compete on his own terms.